Sure. My name is Jennifer Allman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, and I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 11 and 12. As many members of the committee know, the Texas bishops have sought clarification on the DNR procedures for many legislative sessions. Under the current law, do not resuscitate orders can be placed in the chart of a patient without proper informed consent. This is of great concern to the bishops of Texas. The provisions of SB 11 are, as drafted, provide greater transparency and patient involvement in DNR orders. But the bill does contain an exception that allows healthcare involvement in DNR orders when death is imminent. This is critically important, although it may not provide enough protection when a DNR is needed to protect a patient from painful and aggressive interventions. During the regular legislative session, we worked with stakeholders in the House to reach this incremental compromise that is reflected in this bill. The bishops agreed to support Senate Bill 11 as a compromise. As with many in-session negotiations, that happened with a great deal of discussion and debate, and doesn't result in a perfect bill, but a bill we can support. Upon further reflection and consultation with Catholic hospitals, we acknowledge that the bill, as filed, does have the potential for some unintended consequences. It is clear to us that the means and end of SB 11 is to aid patients in their end-of-life care, but faithful Catholics may have legitimate differences of judgment about whether the bill achieves that good at which it aims. Therefore, faithful Catholic positions on this bill may differ. You will hear from Catholic hospitals today with some concerns that they have. We agree with their concerns and strongly urge the Senate and the House and the stakeholders to continue to have agreement on the bill while addressing these concerns. We believe that that is possible, but we also believe that the bill currently contains sufficient improvement over current law to move it through the process, which is why our position is to support the bill, but we hope that some of these fixes can be made without any stakeholder dissension, because we believe that that civil disagreement can result in good policy at the end of the day. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Williams. I'm a registered voter in Williamson County, residing in Hutto, House District 52, Senate District 5. I'm representing myself to support Senate Bill 11 and 80. I have a personal experience I would like to share with you. My husband, Brian David Williams, age 40, passed away 4 months ago on March 2nd at St. David's Georgetown Hospital in Georgetown. He was the subject of an unauthorized do not resuscitate upon hospital admission. My husband's advance directive was submitted indicating he wanted full code status and full treatment, but he remained in the system as a DNR. I was unaware of this until a nurse asked me what she should do if he coded, and I said full measures as indicated by his advance directive. She pointed at a purple wristband and asked if I knew what it meant. It meant he was a DNR. She, along with many nurses and therapists, were confused because the code status in the computer as a DNR conflicted with my husband's advance directive for full code. On the night he passed away, he had a respiratory arrest and subsequently a cardiac arrest. The respiratory therapist responded immediately, but the nurses did not. They stood around and refused to call a code. When someone finally did, it was immediately canceled. I verbally repeated multiple times any DNR was revoked. The emergency room doctor arrived, intubated my husband, and when he requested chest compressions be started, the nurses refused. Instead, during this critical time, they called the doctor who had originally written the DNR and asked him what they should do. They were instructed by him to support his respiration since he was now intubated, but absolutely do not do chest compressions. I yelled at every person in that room and told them if they did not begin CPR on my husband, I would sue them. And the nurses finally began CPR. I am now committed to ensuring no other patients and families will ever be subjected to an unauthorized do not resuscitate against the clear advance directive of patients and their families, and any revocation of a DNR be honored throughout any Texas hospital, healthcare facility, or hospice. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to testify before you today. My name is Catherine Proctor. I represent both myself and Texas Right to Life, and I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 11. Today I'm going to share with you the story of Grayson, who's a young child who had an unwanted do not resuscitate order imposed on him without the consent of his mother, Brianna. Brianna has asked that their story be shared in any way that would help the passage of this bill. Brianna contacted Texas Right to Life in November asking for help for Grayson. He had been admitted to the hospital at 5 months old as a result of complications arising from meningitis and a congenital heart condition. The hospital insisted that Brianna had signed a DNR upon their admission to the hospital, even when she was firm that she had not and would not give consent for a do not resuscitate order. But they said that the order was on file and irrevocable. As a result of the forced DNR, when Grayson's oxygen began to drop and his monitor began to beep, the nurses refused to help. This happened 2 nights in a row. Brianna called the attending physician the second night, who again refused to remove the DNR until she said that she wanted to consult legal help. After that, he immediately instructed the nurses to remove the DNR. Brianna and Grayson have spent many long months in the hospital following this incident, but he's now a year old and he's still fighting. I thank the members of the committee for their time and ask for the passage of Senate Bill 11. I now yield for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Schwartner, and members of the committee. I appreciate this opportunity to speak for you, testify today. My name's Arlo Welke. I'm an emergency physician. I'm from Bel Air, Texas, which is in Houston. I'm representing the 50,000 members of the Texas Medical Association and myself to testify on Senate Bill 11. TMA participated in discussions on this subject during the regular session. We expressed our concerns over the liability and clarity at that time. We still have serious concerns about the impact on patient care. Just as sometimes during legislative session there's not adequate time for discussion, there are still concerns that their thoughtful end-of-life options, documented properly, make sure that everyone in their care has a copy. Physicians, therefore, find themselves in a tough position when we know the patient's will, but when the wishes have not been reduced to writing or as statutorily required, witnesses are unavailable. All too often, we make these decisions in the emergency center. I'd like to provide some specific comments regarding current wording of Senate Bill 11. First, it does not permit the physician to honor patient's wishes. Second, it creates a potential legal liability, specifically as it relates to definition of valid order. Third, it sets up the possibility that a surrogate, not previously authorized, could override the patient's own expressed witnesses. Finally, the bill may require the physician to disregard the pain, damage, and distress that certain interventions, including CPR, could cause. Dr. Chairman and the members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify in this matter. The physicians of the Texas Medical Association strongly urge you to consider our recommended improvements for this bill so that it does not compromise our patients' personal wishes or our professional and ethical obligations to the patients. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Potential for a surrogate to override the patient's expressed wishes, I assume that means a valid DNR already being on file. What does that mean exactly? I heard the individual from THA also mention something similar to that.
Well, there are some examples where the patient, and I think these were alluded to, will tell me personally, doctor, I want this. And sometimes that occurs where, doctor, I don't want my sister in the room to do this, in the room while we're having this discussion. So the ability to respond to what the patient wishes is really our fundamental goal when the patient's lucid and has the ability to make those decisions. The surrogates may not be the legally defined surrogates, but may be relatives that have an opinion that may be contradictory to the patient. So I'm not sure that that's answering your question, but those are the sorts of situations we're placed into, where we will have the expressed opinion of the individual patient and may have a legally authorized surrogate to make the decisions in their inability, but there may be other family members there that have strong opinions that can be directly contradictory to the patient that's here in front of us.
But you're not implying that a legally valid DNR could be overridden by a surrogate?
That's not my intention.
That's just the way I was reading that third paragraph.
Yeah. If I'm competent and qualified and I tell you these are my wishes and it's properly validated through the process, no surrogate can override it. Unfortunately, in the case that was presented to us earlier, someone had an advance directive that said very clearly what to do, and that was overridden by the people. So in the flip, if I tell you, and I had this discussion with one of your association's representatives, there will need to be a level of education with your physicians at this point that says, hey, you just told me not to resuscitate you. I have to follow some processes here and get that process done. And I'm told it's pretty minimal, 10 minutes tops to get that documented and on file in that room. But surrogates don't get to override the DNR process if I'm competent and capable and relayed it and a valid DNR is issued. So,
Fortner, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to submit both written and this testimony here today. I am in opposition and I am representing the Catholic Health Association of Texas. My name is Dawn Seary. I have 45 years in nursing in the state of Texas, and I have a doctorate in bioethics with a Catholic emphasis. The Catholic Health Association of Texas is comprised of 59 Catholic hospitals in the state, and our members include Ascension Health, Catholic Health Initiatives, Christus Health, and Covenant Health. As Catholic hospitals, we are gravely concerned about these proposed bills. We strongly believe Senate Bills 11 and 80 violate the ethical and religious directives of Catholic health care and restrict our public commitment to the Church's understanding of and witness to the dignity of the human person who is made in the image and likeness of God. These bills promote the notion that a person has a positive right to demand CPR. The promotion of the right to CPR rejects the moral truth that we humans do not have absolute power over life. It is contrary to Catholic moral teachings to promote a perspective that biologic life is the ultimate good. The faith that inspires Catholic healthcare guides medical decisions in ways that fully respect the dignity of the person and the moral integrity of the physician who has an obligation to do no harm. ERD 55 states, persons should be offered the opportunity, the appropriate medical information that would make it possible to address the morally legitimate choices available to them. Regrettably, these bills eliminate a physician's morally legitimate obligation to do no harm until certain that death is imminent. As stated in ERD 33, the well-being of the whole person must be taken into account in deciding any therapeutic intervention or use of technology. Therapeutic procedures likely to cause harm or undesirable side effects can be justified only by a proportionate benefit to the patient. Studies have shown that the outcomes of CPR in the hospital setting rarely offer hope of reversing the dying process for the elderly, frail, and chronically ill patients who have multiple life-limiting medical conditions. For patients who suffer cardiopulmonary arrest caused by an underlying progressive illness, the success rate for attempts to resuscitate are less than 1%. The use of compressions, which require the use of 25 pounds of pressure and force on the rib cage, inflicts substantial burden and harm. Complications include broken ribs, punctured lungs, collapsed lungs, internal bleeding, brain damage, severe, unrelenting pain. A physician has the knowledge and experience to pursue the goals of healing, the maintenance of health, and the compassionate care of the dying, taking into account the patient's convictions and spiritual needs and the moral responsibilities of all concerned. By limiting a physician to a decision about attempted resuscitation or a DNR order only in the presence of imminent death,
We deny the opportunity for patients and families and their physicians to have those most intimate types of conversations about meaning and purpose, life and death.
Thank you, ma'am. Senator Senator Rusty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
I think with Senator Perry,